Hi everyone, we are back with our session for the evening, and this one is really special, really close to my heart, and I'm sure all of us will resonate with it. So let me just set the context with a little thing that I think all of us would have felt. So mostly in our organizations, the HR does a whole lot of CSR initiatives, and they reach out to people and they ask. Employees to get involved, and every time we are a part of any such initiative, we kind of have this feeling that we should do this more. We should be contributing more, we should give back to the society at a greater level. Some of us feel that, okay, I'm going to work for next 10 years and then I'm going to just join an NGO, and this is what I'm going to do. So all of these thoughts come to us. I'm sure all of these thoughts would be common. If yes, then start showing thumbs up and show me that you are around. And so that happens with all of us. Yes. So today we're going to touch upon this topic so that it remains fresh. It tells us what we can do if we want to kind of make a career in the non-profit sector, if we want to contribute, give it back. So what is it that we need to do? Today we have with us two very incredible speakers, and very compassionate ladies who are doing some incredible work. So let me start by introducing Sonal. Sonal Kapoor is the founder director at Protsahan India Foundation. Protsahan India Foundation is an organization that works critically on child protection from a legal and psychosocial lens, and encourages young girls from different backgrounds of violence and abuse to reach their full potential with access to high school education, healthcare, and gender justice. She is a World Bank Fellow, Vital Voices Lead Fellow, Australia India Youth Fellow, and an alumnus of Indian School of Business. She has pursued child protection law from National Law School of India University and Harvard University. She advises with UNICEF India on critical child care projects. An erstwhile advertising and communications professional, Sonal is now a leading voice on children's and girls' issues globally. I welcome you at VICA 2020, Sonal. Really nice to have you with us.
Thank you.
In conversation with Sonal would be Anjali Sharma, who is the North India lead, Charter for Education. Anjali G. Sharma is a writer, social activist, and development sector enthusiast. She leads education initiatives at Charter for Compassion for North India. In the past, she has had more than 12 years of work experience in the telecom industry, with exposure to clients and cultures across Asia, Europe, and the Americas. Carrying forward the corporate excellence in the development sector, she helps non-profits in the education space across various domains of communication, strategy, curriculum, networking, facilitation, and operations. A published author, she contributes regularly for various online and print publications, writing on social and topical issues, and she's very close to our heart for all of us here at Women's Web. So welcome, Anjali. So now let us begin with, setting the context for the entire conversation. And let me just start straight away asking the questions. So since our audience today are from varied backgrounds like marketing, teaching, sales, management, tech, and even students who may not be fully aware of how the non-profit sector is organized in the sense of, various entities as well as the heterogeneity, the various layers to it. So could you kind of tell us a little bit about the landscape, like a blanket view of how it is, what the non-profit sector is all about?
I think it's first up, thank you for having me. Anjali, we miss you not having me. We hope you can connect back with us super soon. With respect to the heterogeneity bit, in the entire non-profit or NGO space, I think there is a massive, gap in the understanding. And I can now, 12 years hence in the space, probably say that, hey, I understand that, or I'm trying to understand that. But 12 years back, if somebody would have told me anything about how the KRAs in the NGO sector work, or how there is an HR department and there is a grant risk management department in some of the big grant-making organizations or NGOs per se, I would have probably said, hey, that's not the NGO landscape that I probably understand or would know. But I think even when you're talking about the NGO spaces, there is a huge there's a huge variety of organizations. If I say there are some extremely grassroots led organizations, small, big, we are not looking here really at the budget or the band, the bottom lines, because I often see in the NGO space a lot of people look at, if you'll be making a lot of impact if your budgets are huge, if your bottom lines are huge. And that's honestly not true of organizations, let's say, who are working mostly with volunteers or mostly with a non-paid resource, or let's say they are at a grassroots organization. So I think we also need to understand, if there is a UNICEF or a Bill and Melinda Gates or a Save the Children, there is also always a Gunj and a Protsahan. And there are organizations who are grassroots, Pradhan, there are community-led organizations. And it's very, it's a philosophical understanding of how the entire sector works. But, a lot of founder-driven organizations, we also receive a lot of flack that, we are not greatest at the succession planning and the leadership development journey piece in the organization, which I absolutely understand and agree. And this is something that also comes along with the growth of the organization. But in terms of, how somebody from outside the sector would probably be perceiving the whole space, would be, my basic suggestion would be, don't think it's very different from the hierarchies or whatever in the corporate setup, right? Mm-hmm. If you look at, let's say, a HelpAge India or a UNICEF, or like I said, the bigger organizations, there is an HR department, there is a finance, there's an IT department, just like you would have at any other corporate. But the philosophies, the mission, the vision with which we work, I think that sets us apart. We don't start off with a financial plan. We start off probably a mission statement, that this is the social impact that we wish to achieve within a certain geography or within a certain landscape or a region. And then we move to the budgets. Maybe in the corporate it's the other way around, but if you look at the entire landscape, there is not much difference in which way the organization is set up in terms of structural processes.
So it's more of a mental shift, or so you could call it, like making the transition. So it's like if there is a person, and you've been there, if a person moving in a hardcore corporate landscape suddenly makes a shift to an organization which is in the non-profit space. So what are those 2 or 3 things that will hit? Like the first things, firstly, it's like you need to have a very strong intention to be able to make that shift. And when you do make that shift, how does it impact you? So what are those 2-3 things that you realize upfront the moment you kind of make that?
Ruchi, I can, maybe, talk about my lived experiences or my part of the story. I wouldn't know, because the sector is huge. We have almost about 4 million NGOs in the country. So, there is no, we can always theme them up and, say that, hey, there is 6 categories of NGOs. It's grassroots, international NPOs, or, otherwise national NGOs, on grant making bodies, or implementation partners, as they say. But I think, given from where I was coming from, I will not say I was a hardcore corporate professional, because I was barely 2 years in the corporate industry. And one-off incident, where an 8-year-old had to be rescued from a point of a brothel, I think that changed my trajectory. And when I kind of look back, I connect the dots. I was never somebody who received, a degree from TIS, or received some, an education specifically for NGO management. Even today, when I'm studying child rights law, in theory and practice, I'm doing it 10 years hence of, running the organization. But when you start, I think more often than not, the 2-3 things that will hit you. One is the resource crunch. Because I think the budgets with which some corporate off-site interventions are done are probably our entire programmatic budgets for the entire region, if I look at sometimes. So the first thing is definitely resource crunch that comes and hits you right in the face. The second is, in spite of this resource crunch, you have to work the same number of hours or more as in a corporate. Now, I am also giving you a perspective of a founder-led, vision or a story. For example, if there is somebody on my team, who will probably doing it as, let's say, a 9-to-5 or a 9-to-6 job. But I have seen people on the team who are 20,000 times more passionate than I can ever be. Yes, Anjali.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Please carry on. Yeah.
So I think so. In spite of the resource crunch, the number of hours don't go down. A lot of people feel that if women per se, and I think that's a tag that has been unknowingly, or I think just the patriarch systems have just bestowed upon us. That if we are taking a career break, we will be wanting to shift to an NGO space. I think that stereotype there's nothing farther away than truth, because the work so even during COVID, for example, right? It was not that we were working from homes. We had to be on the field. We had to risk our lives, right? So I think, but the larger fact that these were things that had to be done. If we were not on the field, 6,000 girls or the families that we are working with, they would have literally starved to death, for the lack of a better way to put this, because the jobs were all gone. They don't have savings, right? So the stakes are very high. The budgets are probably 100, right? The work is probably 100x. So I think these are the starkest things that come and hit you. But I think in the end, the good thing also is that people, a lot of, it's funny how you introduced us, as compassionate people, because every time somebody says that I'm a compassionate person, I said, I always say, I think Anjali, having this conversation with Anjali as well, that more than compassion, I think it's the craziness that makes us do what we do here.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. So just to add what Sonal said, that passion is necessary, but it's not sufficient. You need to have the head, you need to have the heart, and you need to have the hands to do all this work. Absolutely. Yeah.
So we've just begun, Anjali, and just spoke about making the transition, and what are the 2 or 3 things that will hit you when you make the transition from a corporate job to a non-profit sector. And I will leave it to you to take it further.
Okay, sure. Thank you, Ruchi, and apologies for the technical glitch. Thanks. So, Sonal, I hope you've unpacked the sector for our audience today. You've spoken about what, in terms of the heterogeneity that this sector offers, in terms of the entities and different process flows that are present in the sector.
So not really in terms of the process flows per se, but I have touched upon just before, we lost you. I think we touched upon the fact that the resource crunches are huge and they will stare you in the face. But the fact that we will end up doing stuff, of course, we have business plans now. Of course, there are, how passion will not, I believe in this thing that hope or passion is never the best strategy for running an organization. You need to be objective about things.
Yes.
You have, the right amount of strategy, planning, and resources to do what you have to do. And
absolutely,
resources is a funny thing here, because passion will only take you as much. You have to raise funds, and fundraising is one of the the dirty word in the NGO space. Nobody wants to do it, but we all got to do it. And founders even more so. So I think these are the areas that we basically spoke about, and like whatever else you want to ask.
Okay. So Sonal, over the last decade, the social sector has witnessed, a lot of paradigm shift. There are diverse opportunities in terms of, the various roles that exist. Of course, the hopes, the aspirations, the skill sets. Are there anything specific opportunities from the perspective of where women who are wanting to join this sector can look for the opportunities when they are moving from the corporate? What would you advise? What would you suggest that, somebody who is moving, how should they explore this space?
See, there are a lot of gaps per se. I will not say any sector is perfect. A lot of, so every time, and I think I will quote one of my most loved people in the sector, Anshu Gupta here. And in a very candid conversation with him, he said that a lot of people, and I absolutely buy that thought from him, and I'm presenting it as it is verbatim from him. And it was that a lot of people feel that NGO sector mein corruption bahut hai. A lot of people feel that this is a sector that's ridden with inefficiencies, that's ridden with glitches of XYZ nature. But we often forget that for every, I agree that out of 10 non-profits, maybe 1 or 2 is ridden with inefficiencies of different kinds. But there is always a Satyam. There's always a corporate who will do philanthropy but not pay taxes, right? So when you're looking at inefficiencies of whatever scale, even the biggest NGOs in the country, or I think rather the NGO, let's say, with the biggest inefficiency or the biggest corruption wouldn't end up paying or wasting the money on the corruption per se, as much as an offside party of corporate would have kind of wasted, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Having said that, I am not being defensive about the inefficiencies in the sector. In terms of opportunities, I think these inefficiencies present themselves also as opportunities to the people from the corporate. A lot of very strategic organizations like Dastra, like a Samhita, like a Atma, for that matter, a lot of organizations have now come up who are actually bridging these inefficiencies, right? And they're actually helping non-profits, to kind of become more accountable. They have the passion that these organizations can never match, but they have also the skill set that they are now sharing, with the NGO sector, right? In terms of systems, processes. So I think it's not, I will not base this conversation per se on women who want to enter the sector, but I think people who want to enter the sector specifically, they can look at the trainings in the leadership space. They can look at the inefficiencies of the succession planning of founder-led organizations. They can look at a lot of times how the accountability or the transparency of an organization or the compliance of an organization is structured or set up. So I think somewhere along, if you are an accountant or a CA or somebody who understands program planning very well, and you can always shadow, the founder, or you can look at, being a part of the entire organization on a voluntary or a paid level basis that the organization expects of you or has the resources for, and then make the organization way more structured so that tomorrow, if their impact today is probably X, tomorrow it can be 4X. Right? It doesn't mean that organizations who are smaller are not relevant. I think this is, again, something that I don't agree with. I don't know if that's the myth or whatever in the space, that if you're doing small work, that's not enough. I think every story of change that you end up impacting or creating is worth the effort. So those inefficiencies, if at all, can be bridged by the corporate skill sets. I think the sector will absolutely welcome them.
Yeah, absolutely, Sonal. And I think in the past few years, a lot of new segments have come up, as you said, to take care of the inefficiencies. Like you have freelancers, of course, volunteer is one way to get inside a nonprofit and understand, how the various stakeholders are placed and how do they interact with the community, with the government, within themselves. And of course, there are small organizations working at grassroots. There are big philanthropic organizations. And of course, there are organizations working in the policy space also. So there's a lot of use to what the sector offers now as compared to probably 10 years back. So a lot of opportunities to go for and explore, depending upon what is your sweet spot and, interest area, and use your experience and expertise.
Absolutely. And I think one of those skills that a lot of organizations that I see also need are basic communication skills, right?
Yes.
So, for example, an organization that's working on the ground, right? They are best, let's say, with working with children, or at solving whatever XYZ issue that they are solving, right? But let's say they don't have the time or the bandwidth, or they can't spare a resource per se, or they don't have. Maybe they looked for it and they never found it in their given network, and their website is not completely updated. That's something that you will find in our spaces. We lost your voice. Achha, you're on mute. Sorry. So I think so a lot of times, if you have great writing skills, if you are great on Twitter, or if you're great on building networks, people again need you in the sector.
Absolutely.
All the time.
Same with technology, I think. I mean, the way digitalization is going, everything going digital, that's another way you can, use your technology and, kind of ramp it, or even use it to ramp up the scale, which usually small organizations might not be capable of doing.
And having said that, in terms of technology or, basic comms or, strategy planning or succession planning or whatever that is, there is a rider. I would be very unpopular to say this, but I'd say it nevertheless, that, if you're not committed, please don't come in. Either as volunteers, it's okay if you're doing, unpaid work, as it's called. But I think if you're not committed, even if you have a salary bracket, or if you have, if you're joining in as a volunteer or an intern or whatever, If you don't have commitment, or if you're doing 5 things alongside and this is your last thing that you want on your resume, please don't come. I mean, we don't need you. Yeah. We are also very, I think, upfront to now say it, because a lot of people feel that, if it's an NGO, we will give them whatever, and they should be able to, make use of it. And if they say otherwise, then they're supposed to be probably arrogant. And I think we are okay with all of those things as long as our first stakeholders, which are in my case, young girls or, little girls, that's my first focus area. Right. And that's also, again, one word that I hate to use, beneficiaries. I think a lot of these things are stereotypes, and the NGOs get the stereotypes also from the fact that, hum sare jhola chhap honge. What's wrong? Right? I think a lot of these stereotypes will also be broken. People understand this NGO sector is not, like this huge monster. We work with limited resources, yes, but we have a voice and a very strong voice of our own.
Of course. And that kindly brings me to the next question about, the common myths and misconceptions, like, a non-profit is low paying or under-resourced, time intensive, and, jhola chhap, as you said, kurta pajama types people and chappal and all those, kind of stereotypes which have been used for people in this sector. Anything which comes to your mind which you would like to, really bring forth and say, nahi, ye nahi hota hai is sector mein.
I think, my whole point is कि अगर होता भी है तो ऐसा तो नहीं है कि corporate sector में नहीं होता है. अगर आप, if you're on the corporate side of things and you're taking the Zoom call in the pandemic, you're still sitting without your pants, isn't it? You probably are just suited right up here until here. So I think let's the conversations have to go beyond the dressing senses. The conversations really have to go beyond the superficiality of how polite people are. I think the conversations have to start making sense on the impact value of the conversations, of the programs, of the organizations, of people, the kind of impact that they can bring it to the sector or to that specific organization's work. So stereotypes are like 100. I remember when I started, so I was 23 or 24, I think, when I started, a little less than 24. And for a lot of Sarkari meetings that I used to go as 25, 26-year-old, now 10 years hence, of course, I have a little more sense. But I think I haven't changed, because who I was then and who I was now is my most authentic self, right? Of course. I think, so for all of the Sarkari meetings, I would wear, like I don't know, maybe a jeans and a kurta, and my understanding of professional dressing sense or a dignified dressing sense, and I would just like how I'm sitting here today, just a kurta, right? So, and I think we really need to stop making parallels with the corporate world. I see so many articles going online that what the NGO sector needs to learn from the corporate world in terms of XYZ, but how many times do you ask the corporate sector to learn the best stuff from the NGO sector in terms of impact, in terms of empathy, in terms of commitment, in terms of innovative when your budgets are new, right? It's two ways. It's absolutely two ways.
Yeah, absolutely agree with you, Sonal. Like, I mean, people might spend years, the entire career lifetime being in a corporate without, empathy, without emotional connect. But I believe this sector is a space where you need to be, you need to have some level of empathy and compassion. I mean, you might not feel, very much related to the cause that you've joined the nonprofit, but, this is what is needed.
So, I often say this thing that, in terms of, so for example, if I am recruiting for a fundraiser, right, I don't want that person to be, great with the kids, or, I want that person to be, doing the job really well as a fundraiser or as a strategy person, but a basic sense of empathy for your country people or for humanity. The generic common sense, the generic way with which you operate. And, in the sector, I think some of the best founders or professionals or whatever name you call them with, I think we don't work with, we don't look at only the CVs. I, for example, I for myself, I would hire somebody basis their attitude. I will not hire somebody because they come with, great amount of skills only.
Yeah.
If the attitude matches, and skills are something that can be learned over a period of time if your attitude is correct. And
Absolutely.
and it's not that in the sector, so for example, I work with children, right? I work with kids, but I don't want a kid of my own. I have decided, and it's as a choice, that I don't want a kid. And a lot of people can't digest that fact as well. So it's not that who we are personally needs to be super kind and super empathetic, but I think a basic sense of humanity and common sense is all that is required.
Yeah, I completely agree, Sonal. And I think my next question was around that only. When you weigh the passion and objectivity, you need to kind of see that you have both the components, right? In this space, it's not that one thing overpowers other, but you need a balance of both of them.
Yes.
Yeah. I think we are nearing the end of the session. And I'll just go and see with respect to any questions that I can see Aparna here.
Hello. That's like the signal that the session is coming to a close. But please do go on to audience questions.
Yeah. So I'm. So 70% of our audience say, Sonal, that they have been judged at work based on their appearance. So it seems it's not related to just this sector, but it goes beyond that. Yeah.
I would probably say that it deeply stems from the fact, and it bothers me, that it's not just in the corporate sector that or the workspaces that people or women are judged by what we wear or what we don't wear, for that matter. We are always criticized for the bra strap that just chooses to show on a certain day, right? Or we are supposed to be these are patriarchal systems. These exist in our own families. Corporate sector, NGO sector, बहुत beyond here. Let's forget that for a while. How many of us can stand up and say that to our mother-in-laws?
Yeah,
I think if we want to bring a change at whatever little level, and I think way more than anything, Greta Thunberg has proved that nobody is small enough to bring the change, which is huge, right?
Yes.
It all depends on when you begin to understand that you have a voice, irrespective of whichever sector that you belong. NGO sector, yes, that's something that I think that's the one thing that we kind of are happy about or sleep happy with, that we say stuff that we feel strongly about. We don't care that 20 trolls will come and attack us on a certain day. If we want to stand up for justice, we will just stand up for justice irrespective.
Absolutely. Yeah. Fine. Anything specific to any programs, Sonal? Any upskilling programs that you think can help anybody move into this sector?
For mid-management or senior management women who are planning to kind of jump into the philanthropy space, or who are planning to look at roles in the international NGOs, etc. There are a lot of courses. I think there is one by ILSS, if I'm not wrong. You can always look that up. I think they are now in the middle of it, or they're just about to launch it. Their basic fundraising course. There are enough programs by Harvard, which are distance learning. Certificate courses. Dasra does a lot of accelerator programs and leadership programs, for people, not just for women. For people who want to, kind of look at the space in terms of branding, in terms of how do you look. NGO sector also requires a basic social media, also requires us looking at volunteers. So all of these skills, along with resources, resource management, there are a lot of courses, and I would kind of recommend to look at these organizations like Samhita, Dasra, ILS, Center Square Foundation. A lot of these.
True. Yeah. And just to add, I think there are few portals like DevNet Jobs, iVolunteer, eVidyalok, which can be kind of explored for more opportunities in the sector, both volunteering and other career opportunities.
Yes.
So just to add on that.
In terms of volunteering, I think nobody needs to teach anybody what volunteering is. I think in terms of, I think Ramya was speaking on the last panel where she very beautifully said that, hey, I just logged in
and explored
emails to 80 NGOs and then them wrote back, right? And I think volunteers is something, committed volunteers. I think I should just replace the word volunteers with committed volunteers. Committed volunteers is what any genuine non-profit organization would require anytime, right?
Correct.
And it's out of these committed volunteers that we actually pick the next person we want to hire, much more than doing a random, kind of looking at that ASAC.
Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Sonal, for this wonderful session. So many insights and perspectives, though we started with a little technical glitch, but I hope we've inspired many women out there to, come forward and join the sector. Thank you. Thank you so much. Aparna, over to you.
Thank you so much, Sonal, and thank you so much, Anjali. It's been such a pleasure having you with us. I think many of us at different stages of our lives deliberate over this, that is there a place for me in this sector? Is this something that I could explore? But to be very honest, most of us know very little about it, except that, okay, we can do some good, which is, like a very, very vague way to think about it, because like you said, it is a sector with its own processes, work systems, probably work hours like any other. And although it has some of its own specificities as well, which we would, like to hear more about, like we've been hearing from you, on some of the issues, and also, of course, which are not unique to the sector necessarily.
Yes. In fact, just to add on to you, Aparna, my basic, I am nobody to give an advice really, but my basic sense of suggestion would be that, don't be intimidated, like especially the women that I see in this space, or who are planning to get into this space, don't be intimidated by things that you don't know. These things can probably be your greatest strength and ensure that you do things that are different from anybody else.
Right.
Like I had no understanding. I had nothing to do with the NGO sector. I thought that just the normal. I never understood what compliance is. I never understood. I have to sit with an internal auditor and show, like, at the end of every 3 months or a quarter. I'll have to break my head over things. And I think I always thought it would be about, being with my girls, looking at doing programs. But to do those programs, you need to have funds. To reach out for that fund, you need to have basic sense of compliance. And all of that is same as the corporate sector.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Sonal and Anjali. It was such a pleasure having you with us. And we will now move on to the next session.
Thank you, Aparna.
Thank you,
Sonal.
It's alright.